Here we go. All right. Good morning. Thank you guys for joining us today for this meeting regarding the incident that took place last Thursday morning on the site that used to be the Blue Heron paper mill. We put this meeting together kind of last minute, and we really appreciate you coming and joining us. It looks like we have a really solid group here today. My name is Isaac Hamilton. I'm the Public Information Officer for Clackamas Fire. Today, we're going to be hearing from our Assistant Fire Chief, Dan Mulick, who was the incident commander on that scene. With us today, we also have our Fire Chief, Nick Brown, Ryan Webb, who represents the Confederated tribe of the Grand Ronde, and he's the engineering and planning manager for that organization. Today, we also have Chris Edwards representing with Clackamas Fire here to answer some questions. And we have Tracy Grisham, who's kind of running all of the important tech stuff. So again, thank you guys for coming. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Fire Chief Dan Mulick for his presentation.
Thank you, Isaac. I really appreciate that. My apologies for no camera here. Introduction, my name is Dan Mulick. I'm the Assistant Chief with Clackamas Fire, and I oversee emergency services. I was part of the incident management team that ran the Blue Heron incident, and I want to run you through the incident, provide some factual information, and let you know where the organization is going now that we are post-incident. So just to recap, on January 30th at 3:47 in the morning, the Blue Heron Fire was dispatched through our dispatch partner, CCOM. Multiple callers stating that there was a well-involved fire at the mill that was right alongside Highway 99. Within 5 minutes, the first crews arrived and sized up the structure as a well-involved commercial structure at the Blue Heron paper mill that was going to need resources to help battle that. So it was increased to a second alarm and then soon a third alarm response that brought in nearly 100 firefighters. The strategic objectives for this incident from the initial on-scene incident commander was to pretty much set up the incident to keep the fire to the building of origin. It is a large building, and all of those in that complex, a lot of them are connected and interconnected. And so the incident commander wanted to keep everything in the original building and protect any exposures, as well as protect the key infrastructures that are along the fire on the Highway 99 side. There is a rail that was within feet of the structure, a major railroad. Highway 99, we're right next to the tunnel. And then on top of that, there is property and structures up on top of the bluff. And the immediate priority was to protect those and that infrastructure from being exposed and threatened by fire. The incident commander designated 4 sides of the building, a north, south, east, and west side, as well as establishing a patrol division up on the bluff to help protect the infrastructure and the homes, as we already had upon arrival vegetation that was torching off along the cliffs. And we knew that we had an imminent threat up the bluff to the infrastructure up on top of there. I arrived in just under an hour into the incident and recognized the need for an expanding incident and a lot of notifications out to our stakeholders around the region. We decided to set up an internal incident management team with Clackamas Fire and start reaching out to our cooperators. By 8:30 in the morning, we had our first cooperators meeting, some on site, some on Zoom. We had a total of 47 participants in that meeting, ranging from Oregon Department of Transportation, Portland General Electric, Clackamas County Disaster Management, our Oregon City Police Department partners, the railroad, our dispatch center, our water district with Oregon City Public Works, and DEQ, just to name a few. What we were looking at doing was providing information to our stakeholders and letting them know that we had an expanding incident that had potential impacts on both sides of the river. And we wanted to make sure that our county partners were well informed with that. The incident management team also was to manage the long-term deployment of resources with over 100 firefighters. We had all of our command staff from our agency on scene, and we had mutual aid partners as well: Portland Fire Bureau, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, Canby Fire District. We brought in mutual aid from Scappoose Fire District to do drone flights, as well as our AMR partner for medical response. We did have a temporary flight restriction requested over the incident, so we could fly drones and utilize our partners to get a better view and a grander picture of the effects of this incident. We also had staff that helped with the logistics, ground support, and our district staffing. We ended up moving the incident command post from on site at the Blue Heron Mill on Main Street to our 130th campus, where we assembled our incident management team. And we were very fortunate to be able to have the agency rep from the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, Ryan Webb, who's on this meeting as well. We brought in Ryan Webb and asked him to establish a unified command with Clackamas Fire. The purpose of doing this was to make good unified decisions to mitigate the risk to the public and our firefighters. Knowing that this was going to be an extended operational period, and we were going to go through multiple operational periods with this incident, I wanted to make sure that we were making good decisions with all invested parties, and we had great success with that. Ryan did an outstanding job with collaborating and immediately following in and having a critical part with the Unified Command and with our incident management team at Clackamas Fire. Moving towards the building and discussing this building, Clackamas Fire is very familiar with the Blue Heron complex. When this was an operational mill, we have had numerous fires while the mill was operational that were smaller in nature, but it brought us in there quite often to get an understanding of the complexity of that campus. Once the mill was shut down, we were very fortunate to have access to that property for drilling, for training, and it really has brought in a greater awareness of the complexity once we began actually hosting drills there. We have done USAR drills, confined space rescue, rope rescue, aerial operations, and we've had any tours from the security guards and are very, very familiar with that. Under any static situation, that is a danger. It's a dangerous building, a dangerous complex with pitfalls and falling debris and sharp objects. When the structure is on fire, it brings a whole different level of situational awareness needs to the incident, and so this isn't the first time that we've ran into this. In 2020, we did have a massive fire that went multiple alarms that was on the corner of the property close to the falls. That fire quickly extended, and we had reports of life threats on that. We made tactical, strategic decisions to put our firefighters at risk to mitigate the life threat that was brought forward to us. Unfortunately, when we made those efforts, we had ended up having a catastrophic failure of the roof structure, and we narrowly escaped our firefighters from the interior and the roof operation before the roof came down. That was a significant near miss with our agency, and it has drastically changed our approach to how we handled this incident on January 30th. We did not want to put any life risk for something that's already lost. The buildings have all of the content and material and valuables out of there, and they have been for some time, and we had no credible reports that there was a life risk. And so what we decided to do was we put a focus on our objectives to keep the fire contained to the area of origin and not let it spread around anywhere around the campus and getting into the infrastructure and the homes. What you can expect right now from the public is that the fire is completely contained. There is still smoke and flames that continue to pop up, but that again is happening because we are doing a constant risk assessment, and we are not going to put our firefighters at risk for something of no value. The roof structure that has started to slowly burn through where a lot of that smoke and flame is coming from on the exposure building has been, during the day of the incident, it was intact, and it was shielding any water stream that we could safely get in there. And we knew that was going to be a struggle and be smoldering until that building actually gets down on the ground. So all of the smoke and flames, they will periodically pop up, and we will do a risk assessment to manage that. The first opportunity that we had, it took several days before we had our evaluation of risk lined up with a strategy and tactic that made sense to go in there and help mitigate those concerns. There is no imminent risk to lives or property or structures surrounding the Blue Heron incident. And like I had mentioned, we will take no risk on a structure that has no value. We will continue to be monitoring it. We have crews there passing by constantly and looking from above from the promenade. And we are going to manage anything that comes up with reasonable expectations focused around firefighter safety. So in closing, I want to hit a couple of key points here. Clackamas Fire had a 2-alarm fire just 2 hours before this incident occurred. It happened up on top of Hilltop, Oregon City, where we had 3 units in an apartment complex burning, and those crews wrapped that incident up, and they immediately responded to the 3-alarm fire at Blue Heron. So there were 5 alarms worth of response in Oregon City within just a couple hours of each other. For an agency that runs 33,000 calls a year, we are very, very fortunate that we have the backing from our public and from our elected officials in support of the levy that helps staff the extra firefighters and the equipment to help mitigate these emergencies. If not, it would likely have been a different story for both of those major emergencies. Clackamas Fire is now finding ourselves as the ground zero of wildfire on the west slope of the Cascades. That is a major component of our operation on how to prevent and mitigate that. And now we're seeing that we have incidents of unsafe structures that we're managing as well that have the potential to affect, not only tax our agency, but have a negative effect on our public. So 2 incidents at Blue Heron, one of them in 2020, and then Miles fiberglass off of 205 and Audi in September of 23. I think that the resources that we deployed had mitigated that, and our relationships with our strategic partners has been outstanding. And we have taken a regional approach to mitigating this and ensuring public safety. Last thing in closing, the partnership with our strategic partners during the initial attack phase of this incident was exceptional. I really want to commend Ryan Webb and his partnership with the tribe, our partners with the Oregon City Police, our mutual aid partners from across the river and across county lines, and ODOT and our dispatch center. We were very quickly able to mitigate the highway issue of being closed and then getting the rail open as soon as possible to help with the economic impact of this. So thank you to the partners, and I will turn it over to Ryan Webb from the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. End of report.
Hey, really quickly, Chief Mulek, just to jump in on a question that I saw in the comments. There is going to be a Q&A that will follow this. So there's going to be an open session for both elected officials and stakeholders and members of the media and public to ask questions. But there was a question about air quality. Speaking to the environmental side of this, the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, collaborated with Clackamas Fire throughout this process and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde to evaluate any immediate hazards to the site. That was a big question right up off the bat. Ryan could speak to this, but the tribe did conduct very quickly air monitoring to confirm that there was no asbestos in the air. DEQ reviewed and validated those results. DEQ has also confirmed that it has not observed any sheen on the Willamette River. So in terms of health and safety and hazards, we would have to refer any questions about that to Clackamas County Public Health. But at this point, we do not believe that there is any toxic material in the air based on that air monitoring and sampling. And I thought that was just an important point to get out, and would be happy to turn it over back to you, Ryan.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ryan Webb. I am the Engineering and Planning Manager for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. I will touch briefly kind of our involvement and really next steps that I think people are interested moving forward. So I received a call at 4 a.m. on Thursday morning of the January 30th. I went out to the site, really there to be a point of contact for the tribe and for the Clackamas Fire District. If there's any questions about the site, concerns, being able to answer questions. Then the Clackamas Fire District invited me to their Incident Command Center out there on 130th, and really become in the Unified Incident Command there with Chief Mulick. I'll be honest, it was a fast-paced day, afternoon for myself, someone who comes from an engineering world, being part of emergent services and everything that they have to think about and analyze and react to. I learned a lot, and Dan was excellent at kind of taking me along for the ride about things that they look at, what their objectives and goals are, and how they can reach those in a safe manner, both to the public, but also to the environment as well. And so there were a couple of asks during that time that the Clackamas Fire District had of the tribe. One of them was related to air quality monitoring. Although DEQ had done some initial monitoring and determined that there was no asbestos fibers in the air, an ask was made of the tribe to continue that air monitoring to make sure, as the fire is still smoldering, that we don't have issues when it comes to air quality. And so we got a contractor out there to continue to do monitoring on a daily basis. Really, the focus is on asbestos fibers, but they also do air quality monitoring related to gases as well. And certain gases that would be CO2 levels, LELs, VOCs. So that work is continuing on a daily basis. And to date, we have not had anything that exceeds or any concerns from those results. Another ask that was made by Clackamas Fire District at that time was to really mobilize maybe a piece of heavy equipment that could help potentially with fire suppression in terms of moving debris or things like that. We mobilized a contractor that we have under contract to be able to assist as needed. And then really from there, really kind of an ask has been made about the kind of the structures that remain and cleanup activities. And what I will say when it comes to next steps of the tribe, if people are familiar with the site, people are familiar that the tribe is now very well versed in demolition activities on this site, as well as cleanup activities as well. We did have a fire, as Chief Mulick mentioned, back in the end of 2020. Again, we're well versed in cleanup activities and demolition related to that, as well as ongoing demolition that's happened since that. And so this really is something that we are, I would say, unfortunately, familiar with and equipped to deal with. We have had, or I have had, many meetings with the different local and state agencies as it relates to be able to do demolition out here on site. Really trying to figure out how we can go and get permits, how we can do testing and sampling of both the burnt area and the impacted structures to make sure that if there's hazardous debris or materials, that we are cleaning up and abating that work correctly, and then being able to take those buildings down in a safe manner. And so we've engaged environmental consultant, demolition contractor, as well as the local and state agencies to be able to move forward with demolition. What I will say is that demolition has a process to follow. Everything, like I mentioned, from permits to doing sampling of the materials, to putting a plan in place, to then mobilizing specialized equipment to do it. We're all moving forward, and I think there's been a lot of great collaboration from all entities involved to make sure that this happens in a timely manner. But there still is a process too that we have to follow to make that happen. And so in terms of next steps, I can assure everybody that the tribe is doing everything we can in a very timely manner to get these structures down as quickly as possible. There just is timeframes associated to the different pieces to be able to do that. I know a lot of people are probably going to ask the question of like, okay, so when? And I don't want to throw out timeframes that are unreasonable, unrealistic, and get people's hopes up, but I can assure everybody that we have, since this fire started, and will continue to make sure that our priority is getting these structures down in a safe manner and this site cleaned up in a safe manner to make sure that it's not a public health risk or just a safety risk to the public as well. And with that, I think that's kind of really the pieces that I wanted to touch on.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing that, and for Chief Dan Mulek sharing what you'd shared. We're going to move into a time now where we will allow questions. Right now, we'd like to take questions specifically from local and elected officials. And so if there are any questions, if you want to hit the raise hand button there at the bottom of your screen, Tracy will move you over, and she will call your name and you can share your question with us.
Isaac, I believe we also expand this category to key stakeholders, whether members of the Willamette Falls Trust who are deeply engaged in the work, or public officials at our partner agencies that may have questions, in addition to elected officials.
So Jim has been moved over. Jim, if you would like to ask your question.
Sure. My name's Jim Nicita, N-I-C-I-T-A. I live immediately above the mill, and I would like to open by expressing my sincere thanks to the brave and efficient firefighters who reduced the risk to my home and my neighbor's home. Naturally, I'm concerned about exposure to toxics. And I have a very specific question as to what is known about the composition of the roof material on paper machine number 4 that continues to burn. I understand that there were some beams that had creosote spread over them in the past, and that there was some vinyl in the roof. But that's probably just a small sample of what was in that roof that is reigniting occasionally and continues to smolder. What was in that roof? What is in that roof? What are the chemicals in that roof? Specifically, obviously, they are significant enough that they are resistant to water that has been pouring on them and allowing them, they've been continuing to smolder and burn despite that. And I'm just very curious as to what specifically are the materials and the chemicals that are in the roof of number 4 paper machine building. Thank you.
Isaac, I can take that question. Jim, thank you so much for asking that, and again reaching out and saying what you said about Clackamas firefighters and the department and the valiant effort that they've made on this fire. I know that you had conversations with one of our battalion chiefs, and I really appreciate you reaching out and the conversations that we've had over this last week about some of this. In terms of the environmental factors, what we know is that DEQ's confirmed that there's no asbestos in the air, and the exact chemical makeup of that's going to have to be a Clackamas County Public Health a question. But what we have been advised is that there's no risk to the community with that from the air sampling and DEQ. So, but the actual composition of the roofing material and the chemicals, I don't have an answer for that. What I do have an answer for is the water application. There's a rubber membrane that's over that roofing material, as you can see from your house, and that is what is inhibiting the water from getting to extinguishing the fire. It's not the actual material that's burning. It's just where it's seated in that roofing material with the rubber membrane over it. So as it gets exposed and we can get streams on it, we're able to extinguish the fire. But to answer your question, that's what I have, sir.
All right. Thank you, Chief Brown and Mr. Nicita. Next question.
We have a question from the City of Oregon City Mayor, Denise McGriff. Mayor Denise, if you would like to speak.
Thank you, Tracy. Sorry, I can't see you. It's been a long time since we've chatted, but I'd also like to express my thanks, Denise McGriff, City of Oregon City, to everyone who helped get this under control. And I did want to add our Public Works Department was actively involved in this as well. So please don't forget to put them in the thank yous. My question involves the remaining buildings on site and how are they being secured and protected from further degradation in terms of, fire, occupation by people who shouldn't be in there and anything else. And thank you.
Yeah, I think that I'll take a stab at this and then hand it over to Ryan, and the chief may want to jump in as well. So in terms of the current situation, we've been in active coordination with the tribe around security for this facility, as well as with the partners in your local police department in Oregon City. We're really grateful for that partnership. We understand that this is a risky building. Providing security and taking law enforcement actions is certainly outside of the scope and purview of Clackamas Fire District, although we work in conjunction with our partner agencies to be able to do that work on a daily basis. Right now, I believe that there is a plan that not only is there current monitoring on site, security on site, as well as law enforcement awareness and activity on and around that site. I believe that there's a plan moving forward to be able to address that. I'm not sure how much we were able to speak to that at this point. I'm looking to Ryan and to Nick, Chief Brown, to see if they have any additional color on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can chime in quickly. We do have 24/7 security on site. Our own tribal PD is also doing frequent visits to the site to assist with our PD and trying to make sure that site is secured. The site itself is just such a maze of buildings that it is very difficult to know if someone's even on the site. And so they continue to do, hourly kind of reviews of the site to make sure there's no one in there. But our best and quick way to secure it is probably really taking structures down and really removing those from the site so people can't run through them and hide. And so like I mentioned, we, since purchasing the property, have really been active in showing progress on the site and been doing when it comes to demolition and taking structures down. We plan to do more demolition on this site, really in and around these structures. And so this fire has moved that time frame up, but it's something that we were planning on doing in 2025 anyway. And so I think that really is our best course of action, is to help trying to get some of these structures down. And so it's not a place that's so inviting for people to come and kind of walk through or whatever it may be. And so really that's the tribe's focus, is to continue to show kind of forward progress on site.
Perfect. Thanks you, Mayor, and thank you for being here today. Next question.
Real quick, Isaac. Dan, I think Dan's gonna be able to speak to the back half of that of the mayor's question as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Chief Brown. Yeah, Ms. Mayor, to kind of echo what Ryan Webb said, that the property, and I know there's a lot of participants on this meeting that know that property well. I've spent countless hours on that property over the last 10 years. And fully understand where Ryan Webb is stating that it is hard to know if people are actually in there or not. That component where the fire was along the railroad track it's a highly dangerous area. However, it is the closest area to the sidewalk along Highway 99. And so I understand how that's a pathway in, but they are really hidden. I would just encourage the partnership with the Grand Rod Tribe and our local police agency on just coordinating and working together on a plan to keep people out of there as long as these buildings are up. But the end state is to have these buildings down on the ground, as Ryan had alluded to. So that is a great question. It is an ongoing concern, especially from the fire department side when things do happen and we don't know if people are occupied or not in those structures. And it puts a whole nother level of risk on all the responding crews. So thank you for the question.
Perfect. Okay.
A question from Commissioner West. Commissioner West, if you would like to ask your questions.
Yeah, thank you for holding this meeting. I think it's really important, and just echoing the thank yous to especially Clackamas Fire and your professional and effective response. I think as I learn more about this, I'm really concerned about being honest about how this was a near miss for it being much something that could have been much worse. It's my understanding that this potentially could have been prevented if we had the ability to remove dangerous properties that needed to be demoed, and that there's been some barriers to getting that done. And it's also, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's my understanding that we were seconds away from there being a catastrophic event with the loss of life or severe injury to firefighters, a number of them, as they were trying to fight a 3-alarm fire in the middle of the night, all in the context as we see this fire happen in an urban area of the county after we are watching Malibu ablaze because of some ineffective local mitigation and response. Now, the tribes, local fire, Clackamas Fire, you guys were all still, right? I have no critique with that, but I'm hoping this is also a conversation about being honest about near misses. In my career as a nurse, if we have a near miss, we have to be reflective and honest about that so that near miss doesn't become something catastrophic with a patient. And I look and the more I hear about this, I'm really concerned about multiple instances now in the county where things could have been mitigated, and we're lucky that they weren't worse and more catastrophic. As a local leader in the county, I know we just had a question from the mayor. What needs to happen to allow the buildings to be removed, the permit process to be faster, to get through the bureaucracy so we can actually be effective and prevent fires like this from happening? There needs to be a more local pressure from local electeds and entities to say, this is unsafe. We need you to prioritize this. We do not need to be caught up in the bureaucracy. Has the governor weighed in on this about making sure that her departments are working with the tribes and with Clackamas Fire, Oregon City, and the county in a way that's effective and efficient? I can't even imagine. It's hard to even think about, like, what if we did lose a number of firefighters? What if during this dry January, cold weather, that fire climbed up to the hill and we were evacuating houses, that conversation happened? What if the train tracks were lost? How does that impact the region as a whole? I'm very, very concerned that I feel blessed that it wasn't worse, but I'm very, very concerned that the preventative measures that could have been taken seem to have not been taken, and we just barely missed a catastrophic outcome. I'm hoping you can speak to that.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I really appreciate the question. I'll go ahead and take the first cut at this one. I think your question is a very important one. Obviously, in recent years, we've put a lot of effort in deployment around wildfire risk, and that's been an area of public attention. It's probably been lesser known what you've raised, which is the structures that we have, brownfields that exist throughout the county that are in a condition or a state that could cause a serious catastrophe within an urbanized area. And that's really what we're trying to prevent. One of the situations that you mentioned with the Miles fiberglass building, Clackamas Fire District had provided notice approximately 24 hours before that building caught fire that it was an imminent fire risk. We are not as an agency, our job is to be firefighters and provide emergency fire and medical response and coordinate with our partners. We don't set regional policy, issue demolition permits, that type of thing. But really, I think your question is an important one. in that we have been seeing some increased risk. We're very attuned to the risk that exists within some of these structures that are unoccupied. The Miles Fiberglass building in particular, that the cause of that fire was determined to be a warming fire within that building that was started by an unhoused individual. That was the determination. The first fire at the Blue Heron site was determined to be an arson, and I believe that was prosecuted. Correct me if I'm wrong, my colleagues here. And so what we're seeing is sort of a pattern that is emerging here. But we also recognize that the redevelopment of the Blue Heron site and the Willamette Falls project is one that's of strategic state interest, and it is largely outside of our scope and purview, except for to provide the functions that you would expect that the fire department would provide in any sort of a process like that. But I do think that you and your commission are in a position to be able to ask these types of questions. And we have a number of stakeholders that are that I can see on the participant list here. You have the City of Oregon City on the line. We've got Willamette Falls Trust here. We've got the tribes. We have, I'm not aware whether we have Metro here or not. But I can tell you that I was in multiple points of communication with the governor's office directly yesterday. The governor is aware. They were asking the right questions. DEQ was engaged. ODOT was highly collaborative, and that this site was originally, conceived largely by Regional Solutions, and so it is a strategic state project. So, given all of that, there's a complex array of stakeholders that are there. Our interest is in public safety. And so if we were going to be very straightforward about it, we would like to see these buildings come down as quickly as possible. And we're also all community members, and we believe that the plans that are in place and the work that Grand Ronde is doing and the City of Oregon City and others who are connected to these redevelopment efforts could provide a tremendous community asset while reducing the safety risk at the same time. As far as the answer to your question, I can't give it to you, but I think that you're asking the right questions, and we're grateful for leaders like you and others in the community who are participating in this. And our simple admonition would be to work as expeditiously as possible in how you approach being able to bring these structures down and to find what those barriers are and to see where we can eliminate them so that this project can move forward. Does anybody else have anything to add in response to that question?
Chris, I think you articulated it perfectly. I would just like to add one thing: the appreciation to Commissioner West for the recognition of the firefighters and the extreme risks that they face day in and day out, just on a normal emergency incident. But then to throw a dilapidated building that is now on fire, and the risks that they go through, and the all-out effort that they put in to mitigating that risk, to make sure that there's no lives at threat and that the community's safe. And they do this every single day. And so I just commend you, Commissioner West, for your question. And I echo everything that Chris said. Thank you.
Just to interject really quick, Chief, could you be specific about the risk to the firefighters that were in the building that night? I think it's important for us to know as policymakers and community members how close of a catastrophe that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Chief, I think what he's referring to is the first fire,
Yeah,
where we had the roof collapse.
Yeah, he's referring to the 2020 fire that
Correct.
was at the building just to the west of the current building that was involved. We had interior crews because when the first crews arrived, they saw people inside the structure, and so we're all in to rescue occupants that were potentially inside. And as crews were making their way through the building, we had a crew up on two crews on top of the roof and crew inside searching for victims, and the crew on top to open up the roof to try to eliminate the smoke and the heat from the inside the structure to help us to search the building. And we had the top side truck company started to get a sense that there was something not amiss. They started hearing rivets pop. They backed off. They got on the aerial ladder. The crew that was inside took refuge on the other side of the beam inside the building just before it collapsed. So we were a minute, had the crews not been as well trained and alert as they were, we could have easily lost 12 firefighters that day. So, and it was very close. That is why Chief Mulek spoke to the strategy that we took towards the current fire. When you have an incident come that close to losing 12 members, that is something that we learn from, and we see what we could do better next time. But because of their training is why they're alive today. But those are the risks that your firefighters take, and that they go to that ragged edge every single time that there's an emergency, trying to make sure that we save you. And so that's what happened, Commissioner West.
Chief, it feels like that we didn't learn from that near miss, and that we're now in 2025 and it happens again, and we still have buildings standing there. And I don't understand how the permitting process hasn't allowed us to take those down. I mean, this is a big deal. We also had the 2020 fires that were quite catastrophic in Clackamas County.
Yes, sir.
Whatever this is, as local leaders, we have to figure out how we can now. I think we don't want a third episode that is more catastrophic, and I'm very, very concerned about what's going on here. I thank God that we've been able to mitigate these things, but we got to do better at preventing them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Commissioner West, and this isn't just a local problem. This is across the state of Oregon with these buildings. So thank you.
Yeah, perfect. That was a great discussion. Thank you again for bringing that up. And we're going to turn it over now to members of the public and the media as well. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, and Tracy will move you over to ask your question.
So Joelle Jones, if you would like to ask your question.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for taking questions. My question really is, what can you share? I know that it's still early stages, but we're already learning some more details about where this fire was started, new details that we didn't have when we covered this last week. What can you share about the cause, what we know so far, any details about what caused this fire?
I'll go ahead and take that question. Thank you. So this was, as we know, a 3-alarm fire puts off extensive heat, and it is a large building along 2 major infrastructures of travel with the railroad and Highway 99. When these things happen, there's a lot of eyewitnesses. There's a lot of passerbys that are calling, and it takes an extensive amount of time to conduct interviews, gather information, and really point to what happened. With this incident, the times that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, from when it was dispatched to crews on arrival, it had the fire spread had traveled so fast that when they got there, the heat was so incredibly hot that we had fire apparatus that were trying to make a stand on the bluff that sustained significant amount of heat damage to the point where it even melted our MDC screen. And we had firefighters that sustained burns parking there trying to make a stand to protect the fire from going up the bluff. So when that happens, you have that kind of heat. It is not your typical routine investigation of where you have a room and content fire or a building fire. So I guess my message here is that these things will take time. And this goes from kind of transitions from being able to have normal signs of ignition on the property to a lot of interviews that are being conducted by the partnership with Oregon City Police and our fire marshal's office here at Clackamas Fire.
Thanks, Joelle. I'm glad you could make it today.
Yeah, and Joelle, I can add to that we will keep the public informed about the outcome of that investigation as it moves forward. We do expect that more information will be available. Again, because it's an active fire, as Dan explained, there are some complexities. And jumping back to Commissioner West and his prior question, we would certainly welcome the opportunity to come to your Board of Commissioners and present you with those findings once we've made that determination.
All right. Anybody else have any questions?
While we're waiting for any additional questions, one thing that I could add in is that I do know that we have a number of media outlets that I can see who are participating in this call right now. We understand that as you are potentially going to be writing stories, that we have content that is available that we can make publicly available. And that content includes like three-dimensional video, drone flyovers, thermal maps, as well as on-site content, video and photographic content. And so if you are interested in that, you can contact Isaac directly. We have not had yet the ability to put together kind of a full situational overview video for the public, but we'll probably do that in the near future. So any media requests for content or otherwise, please direct those to Isaac Hamilton.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Dennis, if you would like to speak.
Tracy, it looked like he just got bumped out of our screen. He was just on there.
All right, Dennis, if you wanted to hop back on here, but otherwise we will move down the list. If I see your hand again, we'll move you right back over. So it looks like we have Chris, and he would like to speak.
Hi, everyone. Chris Hawes. I'm the board president for Clackamas Fire District 1. I just wanted to thank everybody for being here today to hear the staff give the report. I want to thank my staff for the efforts they've made to keep the public informed. And I'd really like to thank the public for their patience. I know the smoke in the existing fire is an inconvenience and it's probably not fun, but I appreciate your understanding that I don't want to ask firefighters to put themselves at risk to mitigate what amounts to, at this point, kind of an inconvenience. Those people did a great job. A 3-alarm fire that they got the alarm at 3:47 and it was under control before 8 o'clock that night, or 8 o'clock that morning. It was a very impressive outcome, and it was done with no loss of anybody and nobody getting seriously hurt. And that's the thing that always scares me, because even though I just sit on the board of directors, I consider them my family. And whenever one of these incidents happens, I sit here nervous that I'm going to get a call that I don't want to get. So I do appreciate everybody's patience, and Nick, staff, all of you, I appreciate the efforts you've made to keep the public informed. You guys are, as always, amazing, and I appreciate you more than I can tell you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that.
It looks like Joelle has another question. Joelle?
I do. I have a follow-up question, and this one is directed towards Ryan Webb, if he is still on the call. My viewing is a little bit limited, but I spoke with Chairwoman Cheryl Kennedy with the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde in our former report on this, and she mentioned that you guys have 24-hour on-site security. My question is, to your knowledge, was the security alerted to any concerns the morning of that fire? And also, are the tribes considering bolstering security moving forward in the wake of this event?
Like I mentioned, our security folks do kind of hourly routine walks through the whole site. However, the buildings themselves can take hours to walk through just because they're such mazes. And so they have always done that since we purchased the property. They will continue to do that. Like I also mentioned, our own tribal PD do frequent kind of routine walkthroughs and inspections of the site as well. We have asked Oregon City PD to provide some additional assistance to us to help with trying to make sure this site is secure, and we'll continue to make those asks to really make sure that this site is safe for everybody, the public, as well as our own tribal employees as well.
Perfect. Thank you. And as we move toward kind of closer to the end of this meeting, let's take 2 more questions and then I will wrap this up.
At this time, there are no other raised hands.
All right. Anybody on the panel wish to make any more statements before we close this up?
I just have one. I can't thank the elected officials, members of the public that are on this meeting. I can't thank our strategic partners enough that responded to this incident, the collaboration with Oregon City, Clackamas County. I'm grateful for our firefighters. I'm grateful for what they do every single day. They risk so much because of a deep-seated passion and love of service for the community. When we say we're here for you, we mean it with every fiber of our being. And we are grateful for the opportunity to serve you. We're grateful for the opportunity we get to raise our right hand and swear an oath to do everything within our power to save lives and protect property and mitigate the risks that you face on a daily basis. And you have a well-trained, amazing workforce that does this day in and day out. And so I appreciate your time. I appreciate the partnerships, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief. Any other words before we close this up?
I would like to say something. I really don't know if I want to follow what Chief Brown just said, because I don't know if I could say anything better than that. But what I will say is that I do also want to thank, Clackamas Fire District and your firefighters. They did an incredible job to get that fire under control in a very relative short amount of time, and their continued dedication to make sure that that site is safe for the public. And so, we, the tribe, are exceptionally grateful for the partnership that we really have with Clackamas Fire District, but with all entities that help make this a safe place. And so I too do want to say kind of thank you to you guys. It's been, I wish I would have got to know you all in different circumstances, but it's been fantastic to get to know you all, and you truly are some amazing people doing some amazing work. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. And Isaac, just one last thing as well. And it almost makes a point from Commissioner West on his question and statements. But Ryan, it is tough to follow Chief Brown. He always says the right thing at the right time. So don't put that pressure on you. Since 2020, when the Riverside Fire ran through Clackamas County and down the Clackamas River corridor, and it absolutely taxed our system. And it taxed our firefighters. It taxed all of our resources, from our police agencies to Clackamas County resources from across the state. And we have learned a lot since then. We're now in early February of 2025. We have had level 1, level 2, level 3 evacuations almost every year in our region. We've had major incidents, major emergencies that have impacted our communities. And the partnerships that have grown since 2020 in our county are exceptional. For us to have an incident pop off around 4 a.m. and for us to have a collaborators meeting or a cooperators meeting at 8:30 that morning with 47 participants and knowing almost everybody by first name basis is unheard of. I travel around the state going on major emergencies and in around the country, and specifically the West Coast, and there is no region or state or county in any other part of the region that compares to what Clackamas County does, and that those improvements have come from 2020. So we were in a fight in 2020. We're still in a fight on how to handle these, but I think that we're on the right path. So everybody on this meeting, every one of our cooperators has a part in this. I look forward to working together to try and mitigate these moving forward. But it was a pleasure to work with the tribe and with our cooperators and with Clackamas County partnership. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all the support for our firefighters.
Since we
Great,
have
thank
1
you.
minute and everybody else has said something, I did just want to also thank the media that's here and covering this. Your continued coverage and awareness, raising awareness of these issues is really important. It supports the public decision makers who are making the policies that are helping to support both our prevention response as well as our ability to respond to these situations. And then as to some of the other questions about what do we do to mitigate these risks in the first place? And we wouldn't be able to do that without this the solid participation from the media that's getting this message out to the public. We are. It's very strange to be in a situation at the end of January where we were looking at a potential vegetative wildfire risk. This is Oregon, and so things are changing. We're in a high risk category. Residents within Clackamas County over the last several months many have been notified of increased fire risk levels at their homes. This is something that is going to take the entire community. And so we appreciate your continued coverage of this so that we can ensure that we are, like as was said before, remain the premier firefighting agency, in the region in terms of our ability to respond to these types of threats, as well as just being able to improve awareness at every level of government about what steps we can be taking as a state, as a region, as local governments to reduce life and safety threats around fires. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for participating.
Great, thank you, Chris. And again, to our local and elected officials, to the Clackamas Fire board members, those of you in our communities and the media, we really appreciate you coming. And if you have any more questions, continue to send those forward. You can send those through the cfdpio at clackamasfire.com. And enjoy the rest of your weekend.